Alright, so today in YuGiOh Speed Duel deck profiles, we'll be looking at the Amazonas deck. So that starts off with the main monster of the deck, the Amazonas Swordswoman, and we'll be playing 3 copies of that. The main reason you want to be playing this card is because its effect is really, really good. Your opponent will take any battle damage that you would have taken involving this card. So pretty much if they have like a boss monster on the field, like say like a Blue Eyes, or Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, and they attack over this, they'll be taking like 1500 plus damage instead of you. And this one is definitely really good against those decks. If if they want to attack over this monster, they're going to have to take damage. So that makes it really good. There's also some combos later on in the deck that really spice this card up. So we're going to be playing 3 of those. The next card will be another Amazonas card, Amazonas Sage. We'll be playing 3 of those too. And the main thing about this card is it's also 1400, so it's not too bad in terms of attack. But its effect is also pretty neat, where at the end of the damage step, if this card's attacked and survives, or if it attacks and survives, you can pop a spell or trap your opponent controls. So again, this effect is just generally pretty good if it's attacking over smaller monsters, but it can get over some decently sized monsters with some spell and traps that we have in the deck, and also the field spell. So the third monster we're looking at is just 1 copy of Chainmaster. This is a pretty small pool of monsters, considering it's only 7 in a deck of 20, but you don't need really too many monsters because there's a decent bit of recursion and sticking on the field. So you really don't want to be flooded with monsters. You want to have more of the spice with your spells and traps. So looking at this one, 1500, again, not too bad, but the effect is probably where it really shines. It's if it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can pay 1500 life points, which is a pretty hefty cost, but you can look at your opponent's hand, which is decent in itself, but you can actually add 1 monster from their hand to your hand. So the best case scenario for this deck is when you're versing the mirror matchup, so you can add possibly another Amazonas monster or Amazonas spell or trap card from their hand to your hand. But it also works really well if you really know what you're looking for. If you can pick out like a Lord of D and just completely cripple a Blue Eyes deck, or if you if there's just a boss monster that you can take out, if you can pick out a Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, or if you can get even the Eradicating Aerosol out of there and just pretty much cripple the strategy that you can see. I mean, it's worth the 1500 life points. So that's obviously a pretty big tactic if it really needs it, but you don't want too many of these in your deck. You just want the 1. Some people play 2, but I think the 1 is enough where you'll draw into it eventually if you need it. But you possibly could side it out, but I don't think you would want to be siding out any monsters just because you do only have 7. So, but the next thing we want to look at is our spell and traps, and the spell and trap that is probably the star of the deck and the star of almost the format right now is Amazonas Village. And this is really good because it's probably the best field spell out there right now. And you want to play 3 just because there's a lot of ways to pop spell and traps in the new format with Scars of Battle and Attack from the Deep. The 2 newest sets have a lot of ways just to pop pretty much anything at this point. So I think people are really going to capitalize on that. So it would be kind of a brick to draw more than 1 of these, but you really do want to see it and be able to put it back on the field. So not only is it just a decent field spell where all of your Amazonas monsters gain 200 attack, it also works as a way to recur them, where once per turn, if an Amazonas monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, which is actually pretty huge with some of the new cards, you can special summon 1 Amazonas monster from your deck. And it's going to be a level less than or equal to it, but all our monsters are 4, so that's not really an issue at all. You're just going to be picking anyone you want. So that's huge. I mean, pretty much like you're gonna always be able to get out a monster if any of yours are destroyed, as long as you have that card in the field. So that's why you don't need too many monsters, because you can just basically just cherry pick them from the deck. You don't really need to draw them once you draw about 2. Once you've drawn to about like a swordswoman and a sage, you're pretty much good to go for the game. Especially because this next spell card, Amazoness Heirloom, again, playing 3 of it, probably the second most important spell card in the deck, right behind the village. It's going to be basically an equip card that doesn't actually add any attack points, but what it does is it keeps your monster on the field, and it can't be destroyed by battle once per turn, which is already a pretty good effect, but the second effect is really what you're after, where if this monster attacks a monster, you destroy the attacked monster. So if you were to just run into any big monster, this card wouldn't die. You would take a little damage, but then you would pop pretty much any monster. So it is really effective in getting over a boss monster. I mean, if they put all of their resources into, say, like a Blue Eyes or like a Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth or whatever, you can just pop it, take maybe like 1500 or less damage, and then just keep going, and then they're kind of like crippled. So it's really good. And then if you have another monster, I mean, you can just maybe direct attack, depending. So that's really good. But it gets even crazier when you combo Half Shut, which is a spell card from Arena of Lost Souls, and it's just a common, but I think it's actually probably one of the better spell cards out of that set. So we'll be playing 2 of those. You don't want to see it too much, but you definitely want to see it every now and then, where you can target one face-up monster on the field. It cannot be destroyed by battle this turn, but its attack is halved until the end of the turn. So what you really want to play that with is with Swordswoman, because you're pretty much able to cut its attack in half, have it survive, and then if you run into like a Blue Eyes, it's going to be dealing all of that battle damage to the opponent. And again, it gets even crazier if you equip Heirloom, where in that case your monster wouldn't die, and then theirs would die. So it's just like actually insane if you have like all of these cards stacked. Basically, that's just going to be really, really hard to get over. And then let's say that they are able to get over it and they are able to pop it using something like Mitchs Array or anything just to pop it off the field, then you can just, hopefully you have Village on the field and you can just put another one on there. It won't have any equips, but at least it'll be a body on the field. So it's a really good deck in terms of that, in terms of just sticking on the field and not being able to really just completely obliterate you. I mean, you always kind of have something in your back pocket, it seems like. So the final part of this deck is traps, where Windstorm of Etaqua has kind of become the staple for a lot of decks. I think it's a really good card. I don't think it's like going to be the best trap forever, but I think it's really good because it is able to kind of protect you against a big field, being able to change all face-up monsters to defense mode. So it kind of just is able to stop, like if if your opponent is playing like Blue Eyes or something like that, and they just have like Tyrant and Blue Eyes on the field, and you just don't really know what to do, and you just kind of flip this, and you're kind of safe for a turn, and then you can really regroup and probably come at them with something like pretty good next turn. I mean, you have a lot of resources in this deck to do something, so that's always pretty good. And then the next trap card is probably going to be a staple for a while. You're going to be seeing it for a while. It's Kunai with Chain. It's overall really good, just being able to basically change a monster into defense mode, save you from that. But then it is able to give you 500 attack on one of your monsters, which just is really good because that's usually something that like you might need just 500 just to get over something. It's not going to be like you're going to need a ton for a lot of these monsters that you'll be battling, except for a boss monster. But if you just need just a little bit to get over it, then I mean you're good to go. So, and then finally, the card that I think is probably the best skill card for this deck is going to be Destiny Draw. It's kind of a generic skill card, even though it's a YuGiOh skill card, where if you lose 2,000 or more life points, you can activate this, and basically you can not draw a card, but you can search a card from your deck. So it really works well if you just need one certain piece to kind of get your combos just rolling. I mean, if you have like Heirloom and like Half Shut in your hand, you can just grab a Swordswoman and then pretty much obliterate them. You know, if they have like a huge boss monster on the field and you're just able to, you know, draw that 3-piece combo, I mean, that's huge, and you'll pretty much win the duel if they don't really have anything to answer that. So that's always good. I mean, it's kind of a late game where you'll have to lose 2,000 or more life points, but it's not unheard of. I mean, it's usually something that's like really doable. It's just taking one hit and then just basically being able to go off for the rest of the duel. So I think this is probably the best setup that I could find. But if you guys have any other opinions or tech cards, please let me know. I have a few suggestions for side deck or maybe even tech cards in this deck. So the first one is being Ready for Intercepting, where it's definitely really good in terms of being able to clear warrior spellcasters. I mean, if that's what you're up against, it's a really good card, but it's not if you're not playing either of those archetypes. So it's really definitely hit or miss. So I wouldn't main deck it, especially now that people really aren't playing all warriors or all spellcasters at the moment. It's kind of a pretty good mix, which I like, but I think it's hard to like really side against, given you only have 6 cards. So I mean, you could side 2 or 3 of these if you think your locals really has a strong presence of warrior or spellcasters. So that's always a good suggestion. The next one that I think is probably just really good to have around is Mitchs Array, and its effect is that if your monster gets sent to the field or sent to the graveyard from the field, you can just pop a monster on the field, and it is targeting, so that's kind of a weakness there. But other than that, it's a really, really strong card. I mean, if you pair it with like Amazoness Village, where if an Amazoness monster gets popped on your side, you can just replace it with another one. Basically, I mean, if they pop your card, you get to pop theirs, and you get another card, Amazoness monster on the field. So it's like crazy combos like that really come out of this deck when you have cards like that, where it just becomes a lot for your opponent to deal with. I mean, if you had like a woman equipped with 2 equip cards, and you are able to, and they're able to get over that, I mean, you can just basically pop their monster and put something else back out, and then it's just really hard for them to deal with that. You just have so much coming at them at one time. So I think that's always really good. The next 2 are kind of not maybe the best for this deck, but I think they're just interesting. Amazoness Archers, obviously an Amazoness card, but it says that when your opponent declares an attack, if you control an Amazoness monster, change all monsters to face-up attack position, so kind of the opposite of Windstorm. And no flip effects are activated, which is actually becoming sort of important in the future, but they lose 500 attack, and also they must attack if they're able to. So it kind of is an interesting strategy. It definitely takes their monsters down by 500, which is a lot, considering that if you have your field spell, you're already up 200. So that's kind of a 700 point like buffer that you're already creating. So I think in some unique matchups it could be good, but I don't know about all the time. I don't think I would main it. But if you're playing against just another monster, I mean, it's really good in certain circumstances, I would say. But I wouldn't main it. And then the last card I think that's interesting is Adhesion Trap Hole, and it basically halves the monster's attack if it's summoned. So this isn't good, I would say, all the time, but I think that some of the time you can, if you're playing against a deck where their main goal is to get out like boss monsters or something like that, I mean, you do have your combo with Swordswoman and an Heirloom, but and Half Shut, but I think this is just always a good out, where, I mean, if you just drop this, I mean, their monster, I mean, they spent a lot of resources probably to get out like a boss monster, and then you just cut it in half. And that, I mean, can really just turn the game around, where, I mean, you're just kind of in the position now to take it back, where, I mean, if you just get out 2 monsters, you can probably wipe their field and really eat into their life points. So So I think those are 4 cards to think about. But yeah, so this is just my thoughts on the Amazonas deck using the Destiny Draw skill. If you guys have any other comments, please let me know. And also let me know if there's any other decks that you would like me to profile. I'm hoping to get there as many as I can and just kind of go through the Speed Duel's catalog of cards, because there isn't too many. But I really like the game, and hopefully you guys too, and hopefully it picks up some more speed. So, all right, and until next time.